Welcome to Attention Talk Video, where we pay attention to attention. Now, here's your host, Jeff Copper.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of Attention Talk Video. I'm cognitive engineer and ADHD coach, Jeff Copper. And I want to tell you a story of a client of mine. And when you're sitting down and you're trying to take a look at systems and organization, I've talked a lot on this channel before that ADHD is an executive functioning impairment, more specifically a problem-solving impairment. So whenever you've got to resolve stuff, you're going to find it's more difficult if you're doing it with what I call in mind. You do it out of mind with somebody or visually it's there, but in mind. And where I'm going with this is I had a client that was working in an organization that uses a CRM, contact relationship manager. And the idea is you put all this information into the CRM and you're able to track people and automate stuff and follow up, et cetera. However, the individual, while they had information on the CRM, were really managing much more of it on a spreadsheet. And as we pulled up the spreadsheet, I began to look at it, and the person was basically saying, I need to get rid of the spreadsheet and put this information into the CRM. And if you'll notice at the beginning of the video, I said cognitive engineer and ADHD coach. That's because of my program, Cognitive Ergonomics from the Inside Out, where I take an engineering approach to things. And so with that mindset, I look at what he was doing, not as being wrong, but being curious as to why instinctively he was using a spreadsheet. And it was interesting because it was in part color coded, and in part a bit of a summary of what he was doing. And the way he had it set up, he could search it and he could print it. Now, the CRM didn't really have those types of capabilities, but this is difficult this is an intangible thing, but there was more steps for him because he had to load the information twice. And he wanted to go to the CRM because it would reduce the number of steps, the physical steps. However, the problem is it would increase the cognitive load, okay? When you're going through a spreadsheet, let's say on some projects, and they're not color-coded, you have to read each one of them to kind of get the status of it, if you will. Whereas if they're kind of color-coded, all you have to do is look at the ones that seem to indicate that they're in trouble. Like maybe you have green, yellow, and red. You don't have to read the ones that are in green because that would indicate that all is well. So you've reduced that. Also, when you're on a CRM, you're sometimes flipping or toggling between one screen and another screen. And with executive functions, if they're impaired, you're holding stuff in your working memory. And sometimes when you read something on one screen, by the time you toggle to the next screen and search for what you're finding, you often forget what you were originally there for. So I'm telling you all this because here's my point. A lot of times when we look at systems and we're trying to reduce the steps, we're trying to make it easy, but what's invisible is the cognitive effort. So in this situation where I was coaching the guy, I was like, it's more work for you to enter the data twice, which doesn't require a lot of intellectual capital. In fact, he actually can have somebody else do that for him. But when it comes time for him to interact with the data, the spreadsheet is much easier. It doesn't require nearly as much thought. So on the surface, it looked inefficient, right? From the amount of input and stuff. However, cognitively, it was easier. And this is not uncommon. There's lots of people with ADHD that a lot of times they're going with what they think they want it to work and not realizing what they're doing it for a cognitive reason. It's a subtlety. But a lot of times you'll find yourself trying this system, that system, blah, 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 trying to shorten it. And you don't. And if you watch your instincts, you're going to kind of revert back to some of that stuff. Just like there's a lot of people really that override this urge, but a lot of people instinctively print because printing stuff is easier on your working memory. In fact, I've got a full-size printer. I probably print a whole box of paper a month. Even when I'm doing presentations, I'll print like 50 slides and I put them all on the ground because I see them all and I can storyboard it and kind of put it together and organize it on the floor where I have a hard time getting the mind. So again, my point really is a lot of times we're paying attention to the wrong thing. And a lot of times you have systems that have extra stuff outside of it that looks like it's more physical work, but in the end, it's less cognitive work. And that's what you're trying to solve for if you've got ADHD. I hope this is giving you pause to ponder, to look at this a little bit differently, take a look at your behavior. Maybe you've tried a lot of things and they haven't worked because it's increasing the cognitive work. If you're new to the channel, please, what do you think? You got a story you could share with us? Or even, I'm okay with you disagreeing as long as you do it respectfully. I mean, this is a forum designed to get people to think. So with that, we hope you've enjoyed this edition of Attention Talk Video. Take care.